Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, notice of this meeting was given on July 30th, 2015. The meeting will convene at 7:34 p.m., and visitors may obtain a request to be heard form from staff for any presentation they may have for the meeting. In accordance with policy, the request to be heard forms must be submitted to the secretary within the first 5 minutes of the board meeting in order to be heard at the meeting. Agenda items are subject to reordering at the discretion of the board president. Please attend the entire meeting to ensure that you're able to hear any discussion. Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 and the Board of Educational Service Unit number 19 will be held on Monday, August 17th, 2015 at 6:30 p.m. in the board meeting room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cummings Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours. Pursuant to Section 84-1412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the board meeting room on the north wall. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. This time, Vice President Williams will lead in the OPS vision and mission statement.
A little microphone mix-up there. All right. The vision, every student, every day, prepared for success. And the mission, Omaha Public Schools prepares all students to excel in college, career, and life.
Roll call, please, Mr. Ray.
Fay.
Here.
Godding.
Here.
America.
Present.
Scanlon.
Present.
Snope.
Present.
Underwood.
Here.
Vargas.
Present.
Wayne. Williams.
Present.
8 present.
Thank you. Moving on to Superintendent Communication.
Thank you, Madam President. Several items. First, I'm going to hand around copies of the New Teacher Institute that started on July 29th, and I'll start to my right, Madam President, and to my left, Mr. Snow. Just to give the board an idea, and the public, we'll give one to the public if they'd like one, or media that's here. But a great activity that we continue to enhance every year on how we develop our new teachers. So thank you, Mr. Wakefield and the HR staff. They're the primary leaders in this work, but some really good work. The next thing I'd like to point out is two of the books that were utilized this summer One is School Culture Rewired by Todd Whitaker and Steve Grunert. This was the book we used for our principals retreat this year, and I wanted the board to have this available. If any of you would like a copy of it, we'll make sure we get you a copy of it. But a great book on changing cultures, shifting cultures, and how we make sure all students succeed. And then the book that was handed out today in our leadership kickoff, and by the way, thank you all for attending. We had majority of board members were at the event today, and it was a great opportunity to recognize all the district leaders and an opportunity for them to hear from the author of this book, Pedro Noguero, Dr. Noguero, on excellence through equity. Had an outstanding presentation and really some quality feedback. So if the school board's interested in this book, please let me know and we'll order these for you as well. I think it's a quality read and think you'd enjoy that. Lastly, I just wanted to reiterate something that I shared with the board, that we've been very blessed and fortunate that the Minnesota Humanities Center has been, the grant has been re-upped for 3 years, and so Sharif will have a group of people that we've been working with already in the Minnesota Humanities Center staff to continue working with our schools and buildings and expanding that work in a way that makes a difference for our young people, which is obviously where we're at now, is trying to make sure not only is our student success measured in student achievement data, but it's also measured in attendance rates, suspension rates, graduation rates, and all of those pieces are related to multiple factors. And the last thing I'd comment on, in this document, I've got 400 feedback forms, if you were interested in glancing at them, from this morning's leadership kickoff. And I'm happy to say that as I look through them, it's 99.9% happiness from all the leaders in this district on what they witnessed and what they heard as we presented this morning. I did notice that we did have 4 comments. I guess one of the soap dispensers in the women's bathroom was broken, so we'll work on that. It was actually at the Ramada, so we'll have to work with the Ramada on that. But other than that, everything was really positive. So, and again, thanks to the board members that attended. I know that was a time commitment for you, so we really appreciate that. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Are there any board members that have reports that they'd like to give at this time? Ms. Williams.
I had the opportunity to attend not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, Saturday or Sunday. The days are all running together anymore again. But Clarice Jackson with Voice Advocacy Center held her Letitia J. Fox legacy event. As you all know, her daughter was killed January, I believe. And so she honored her with that work in dyslexia. It was an amazing time. I was able to present the Tutor of the Year award to an amazing lady, Sunshine Russell. But really just wanted to really give that shout out to Clarice for her work in dyslexia. I've been working with Clarice since before my time on the board, and she's really taught me a lot about dyslexia, and so I just really want to continue to help her advocate for our students that have dyslexia and those families, and a very touching awards night and ceremony of all the students that are in our everyday lives that we don't really know that struggle with this and the impact that this has had on their lives. And so just really wanted to mention that because it was a wonderful event. And then also many of you were at the MMP luncheon today. We had a great guest speaker and just really reaffirms our work in our district and what we're doing with mentoring and working with students and really setting the bar high. So really wanted to give MMP their shout out as well.
Mr. Vargas?
Thank you. So I had the opportunity to attend the Latino Center of the Midlands dinner. And it was fantastic to see our superintendent support the Latino Center of the Midlands and other OPS staff and the Omaha Schools Foundation. There's not enough to say about the work that Latino Center of the Midlands has been doing for so many years, for decades now, and specifically under the helm of Carolina Quesada, who serves on many committees and has, as a representative of South Omaha, through our strategic planning process, and then also through our OPS bond, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. It was just a great ceremony to build awareness on what the center does, and specifically when we're looking at our students, our high-risk students that are working in some of the leadership development and academic programs. We do great partnerships, obviously, with South and Bryan through that, and I just wanted to highlight them and then also thank ongoing staff at those high schools and our central staff for being in attendance and our superintendent for being in attendance. It means a lot, and I know it means a lot to the community, so thank you.
All right. If there are no other comments, we'll move on to public comment. And our first public comment is Barb Netzel. If you would please state your name, the spelling of your last name, your address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Mr. Ray will let you know when there's 1 minute left and when there's 30 seconds left.
My name is Barbara Nitzel. The name is Nietzel. What else did you ask?
Your
Address? 14452 Burdette Street, Omaha, 68116. My name is Barb Nitzel. I have a daughter in the alternate curriculum program, ACP, better recognized as special education at Burke High. I would like to discuss my concerns relating to special education services provided to the students in the ACP curriculum at Burke High and in all OPS schools. It has been brought to my attention that there will be 41 students this year in the Burke ACP classrooms. This is an increase of 6 students from last year, and among the new students coming in, an increase in the number of students with wheelchairs and walkers as well. This worries me for several reasons. The class size is over the top in terms of the number of people that a teacher can reasonably be expected to service. Where does the cutoff come? What is acceptable? With a class of 20-plus students per room, how can a teacher focus on the student's individualized educational plan, IEP? The effort in lesson planning, tracking progress, and paperwork requirements for each student does not allow for these class sizes to be so large. 20 students per class is the same size as a regular ed class. The physical size of the classroom also becomes an issue. The classroom is crowded as it is. Special ed classrooms are not set up as typical classrooms. They tend to have stations so smaller groups can work in order to accommodate individualized educational plans. Also, wheelchairs and walkers take up a lot of space. I realize paraprofessionals are provided for aid and assistance in the special ed classrooms. Currently, there are 6 paras at Burke for the next year, and I've heard that a 7th has been hired. Because of the high number of students using wheelchairs and walkers, Burke holds the distinction of the highest number of students using wheelchairs and walkers. The level of assistance for these students is obviously higher than students who are ambulatory. With the increase in number of students with wheelchairs, there is less aid available for students who may not have mobility issues but still need extra assistance in other areas. This leads to my next issue. I have been and am even more concerned for the coming year that students who may not have high levels of physical or intellectual needs get left behind or ignored due to the fact that they can do more for themselves. I worry that high-functioning students become aides for students that need more help and spend a lot of time twiddling their thumbs waiting for everyone to get pulled together. There are students who have the ability to partake in regular ed classrooms with para support. However, I have never gotten a straight answer as to whether a para stays in a regular ed class to provide this support. I am given the impression that a para may escort them to class but not stay. This makes the inclusive experience unproductive. Paras also go out to work sites with students as job coaches. If paras are giving support for inclusion and work experience, the level of support in the classroom becomes stretched thin. This definitely places more demands on the paras and teachers left in the classroom. This level of demand leads to insufficient teaching and support to fulfill a student's IEP. This also leads to burnout. OPS website for the special education reads as follows. Our mission to provide leadership, services, and support to strengthen the capacity of schools, families, and communities to enhance student success by establishing high expectations and high-quality education for all students with disabilities. My hope is that when my child leaves Burke, I feel that she has had the best education possible. Not achieving all she could possibly achieve due to the lack of foresight and overcrowding is unacceptable. I know that the problems do not just affect Burke. This affects all ACP classrooms for all age groups. I have watched the consolidation of classrooms and the increase in size of class for ACP classes over the life of my daughter's enrollment at OPS. My view of the ACP program...
1 minute.
is becoming one of glorified babysitting. This is not the intent of an IEP, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the concept of No Child Left Behind. The number of students in the ACP program is growing. We need more teachers, paraprofessionals, and space. Children with intellectual disabilities is not going to stop. They are not going to go away. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Ray, do you have a copy of her summary? Can you work with staff to provide maybe a summary back to the board based on the concerns? Thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Prue. Please state your name, your address, the spelling of your last name, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Mr. Ray will keep you updated.
All right. Chris Prue, CHRISPROULX, Omaha Education Association, 4202 South 57th Street. Just here to talk briefly about the academic eligibility policy. I was encouraged by a lot of the dialogue during the work session earlier. I'm glad to hear that for the most part, the sentiment of the board members is that we have a good policy in place, and I'm hoping that we can keep this policy intact as much as possible. We believe highly in keeping a high standard for all of our students, and anything to lower that standard, I think, would be a move in the wrong direction. However, listening to a lot of the presentation, I think there are some things that definitely do need to be addressed in some way. At the conference this morning, Mr. Nagara, a big part of what he was talking about this morning, dealing with discipline and how we should approach discipline. Discipline should not be about punishment. This policy should not be about punishment. This policy should be about how we help students learn strong moral and strong characters. One of the points he made this morning, if we have a student graduate high school, they go and they open their own bank, and then they go and embezzle their own money, then we failed as a system because we have not educated that student to come away with a strong background and a strong moral character. And I believe if we do this policy well, that we can help our students graduate from our schools, not only getting a strong education, but learning strong moral characters as well, strong work ethic as well. I'd like us to consider, I'd like the board to consider one of the ways to go about helping get students to get back on track if they do end up falling below the line or getting an F in a class, is to look at a way we can put some of the impetus back on the student to track their own progress. When I was coaching middle school, when I was back in Washington State, we did periodic checks every 2 weeks. And when a student was not eligible anymore, it was on the student to go around to all their classes and get their sheet filled out, just kind of like you described. And they had to bring that sheet back to the coach to show, I'm back up. I'm back up where I need to be. It wasn't on the AD. It wasn't on the coach. It wasn't on all the teachers. It was on the student. They had to share some of that burden. That's not to say that the ADs can't do some of this work or that the teachers, the coaches can't do some of it. But right now, we're putting all of it on there. And there really isn't any ownership of the student to get that grade back up or to own why I even have to do this. We, as a coach, one of the things we would do to help our students as well is, like what you were describing, it was every day. We self-imposed on some of our student athletes a 30-minute, you miss practice, you miss the first 30 minutes, you will stay back, you will go work with Mr. Smith, and you will go get your math grade up. And you will do that every day, and then you'll make up the conditioning later. And we supported the student because we wanted academics to come first. I think there are some fairly simple ways to work with this policy to make it work for everybody. I just would speak mostly to let's not go back, let's not do anything that would look like we're lowering our standards, but put some common sense Band-Aids in place and make this policy work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anthony Cato. Please state your name, the spelling of your last name, and your address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Mr. Ray will let you know when you have 1 minute left and when you have 30 seconds left.
My name is Anthony Cato, Jr. I live at 2596 Crown Point Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. I'm impartial in point to the point of students having proper grades to play and participate in extracurricular activities. However, I have some strong reservations. Number one, this body should make every single student have at least a 2.0, not a 1.5 like some of the schools have saying that it's a 2.0. That's atrocious. That doesn't do you well in real life. You say everyday real experiences, a real student has to have a 2.0 to remain in school, pass 2/3 of their classes. To participate in anything in OPS, you must demand that of a student, and you must demand that of your teachers. The reason why I'm here is because of an atrocious incident I saw last March, where 5 educators per team from junior high to high school had students that they were teaching and tutoring for an academic program for history. Now, that's a unique thing when you talk about history. That means somebody's learning and they're prepping them to be good students. When you can't even answer a local history question in your own community, and then you have the audacity to say it's right, is atrocious. My point being, John Ewing wasn't the first elected county official here in Douglas County. And I don't even live here. I'm not even from Nebraska. Carol Woods Harris was. She was elected in 1992 and was board president, county board president, till 2014 or 2004. Now, if you're a local junior high student, I don't really expect you to learn that right away. I expect those 5 student teachers that were helping them to maintain that education and grow in knowledge to teach them that. But when I see seniors or juniors in high school who answer one question at a history challenge and get 3rd place and have the audacity to say, we got 3rd, is atrocious. And that's because our standards are too low. 2.0 in real life is 2.0. You don't get it, you flunk out of college. You don't get financial aid. You're not successful. So if we're going to teach about everyday real life experiences, let's up the ante. It's on the student. It's on the coaches. It's on the parents. It's on the administrators. It's on the AD. It's on all of us. And if we as a body allow anything less than that and don't change it, you're setting up a lot of dummies. A lot of dummies. And we don't want another Creighton University incident where a guy got a college degree and couldn't even read. That's atrocious. So for me, 2.0, it should be 2.5. And it should be that every coach and every teacher submit a progress report every week to a coach or administrator saying, this person deserves to play for the name on the front of the jersey. Because they got the right to understand what it means to play for that school, to participate for that community, to represent their school or their community, their parents, their family, and the rest of it's in the proper way. So if anybody that doesn't have a problem with what I said, I'm sorry. I guess I got a college education because somebody in high school and junior high, and I can remember a lot of those teachers who pushed me every day, Miss Carolyn Ronk, Miss Walter Sue Dodd, Miss Lily Faye Johnson, because I only played high school ball 1 year in this very same building, pushed me to say, you got to do it because nobody's going to give it to you, baby. And if you don't, you flunk out, period. So 2.0, please raise the standard and please hold everybody accountable. And one other thing, I heard some people from the education board, school teachers union were complaining about adding extra 20 minutes to the day. Tell you what, drop home. Don't talk about homeroom in the morning. Do it in the late afternoon and ask every student. I bet you if you find one particular subject about what's going on in the community, in their state, in the world, you might get a better understanding of what they really need to learn and how to get through them in a better way. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Doug Kagan. Please state your name, your address, the spelling of your last name, and then you'll have 5 minutes, and Mr. Ray will keep you informed.
Good evening. My name is Doug Kagan, K-A-G-A-N, 416 South 130th Street, and I represent Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. Cost overruns for the 2014 bond issue continue to be alarming. There exists a long list of cost overruns on bond projects for design and construction. There exists a $37.9 million program contingency fund to pay for these cost overruns, but at the rate of these overruns, this fund will run out of money. The company that OPS hired for $15.9 million to manage this bond issue should have foreseen the changing construction, labor, and materials market forces, all of which have increased costs. When the large bond projects begin next year, there is no publicized plan in place to prevent what could be huge cost overruns then. The $221,201 for program management and administration cost overruns, a glaring example of poor financial management in both the design and bidding award phases, is unacceptable. This board should have been aware of competing construction projects in this area by other school districts and other public and private projects that would affect the labor market and your bidding process. Taxpayers deserve and demand better accounting. In this financial fiasco, if you do not implement a remedy, I doubt that OPS taxpayers are in a mood to spend additional tax dollars on rebuilding and renovations or vote for another bond issue in 2017. You are the governing structure for the school district. You have done nothing tangible so far to stop this massive hemorrhaging of tax dollars, yet you have added items to the bond issue, which only aggravates the situation. Taxpayers await your response. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think Mr. Summers will be presenting on the bond later in the board meeting. Our next speaker is Dan Livingston. Please state your name, the spelling of your last name, your address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Mr. Ray will keep you updated at 1 minute and at 30 seconds.
My name is Dan Livingston, Livingston, and my address is 7407 North 116th Avenue Circle.
I'm Elizabeth Sevchek, S-E-V as in Victor, C-I-K. I'm the attorney for Four Stones Development. What we'd like to discuss today actually relates to agenda number H13 and the purchase or potential purchase of real estate for the Omaha West High School. We feel that what we have to discuss today is fairly sensitive in nature given the sensitivity of purchasing real estate by OPS. We would prefer, and I think the board might prefer, that we speak during executive session rather than in the general public, if that would be acceptable to the board.
I'm going to let our attorney respond to that.
No, we will not speak in closed session with,
Okay.
I would recommend against it.
Well, then we will go ahead and place the terms of what we have to say about that purchase in front of.
I want to be clear. I have a question for Ms. Neelis Brash, if that's okay.
Okay.
Ms. Scotty.
Yep.
So what I heard Mrs. Neelis Brash say is that she recommends against it. That's different from we can't address this in closed session. So I just want to be sure.
That's what I mean, is that we would recommend I would recommend against bringing anyone into closed session.
But so you're saying you recommend against it, not that we can't do that.
You can certainly do that.
Okay, so I think that's the issue that I would place before the board. There's a difference. You see, does the board understand the difference between, okay, I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying I want to be clear that we understand that we have an option. That's all I'm saying.
So we're in the middle of public comment right now, not in.
Except the board can go into closed session anytime they want to.
We're willing to wait as well until
Right.
you're ready to discuss that topic. And I believe we emailed Ms. Godding earlier, and so she's aware of the sensitive nature of the terms that we would be discussing out here in the open if you'd elect not to.
So the recommendation from legal counsel is that the recommendation is to not go into closed session with anyone on this topic. Basically, any time then that someone wants to go into closed session with us on land acquisition, we would be, opening ourselves up to that. So the recommendation is that they can go ahead and speak. And the item right now is on the consent agenda, and if we'd like to pull that off of the consent agenda item and vote on that item after closed session, we can do that as well. So I guess I'll look to board members on, so the recommendation from legal is not to open ourselves up to going into closed session. With someone during public comment. And for any future land acquisition. So go ahead, Mrs. Fay.
I understand. I want to make sure that the board fully understands all of its options, and that that's all I'm saying. And so if perhaps, and because we can take public comment anytime, not just during this public comment period, it's, Mrs. Neal-Sprash, I would appreciate if you're going to address me, you can just address the entire board.
If you, I have legal advice.
Well, then I think that that's appropriate to give to the whole board and not just me. So I think since we can go into closed session at any point, and because we can take public comment at any point, my recommendation, although I am not legal counsel, would be that they refrain from saying what they're going to say, which is perhaps sensitive in nature. We pull that item off the consent agenda and have an opportunity to discuss how we want to handle it when we're out of the public comment period.
We can certainly have you not speak right now. We can pull the item off and move it to action after closed session, and we can make the determination in closed session whether or not we want to include anyone else in our closed session or not.
And we can go into closed session more than once during a meeting. We can go in at any time. We could go in on one agenda item and come out and go back in at the end of the meeting, just to be clear. We don't have to wait.
And we're not requesting to be in your entire closed session on this topic.
Obviously.
We just want to present what we have so you can discuss it.
We just don't have anything on our agenda related to your topic, specifically related to what you're
Well, it does
bringing
affect
forward.
H13.
Right, but that's with a different entity.
Yes, but what we have to say will affect that.
So I will certainly pull it off of the consent agenda. We'll move it to an action item after closed session, and the board can determine in closed session whether they want to include anyone else to be a part of that. Mr. Wayne?
Here's the dilemma if we don't go into closed session right now, is that we are now changing the manner and content in which public comment is being offered. And that is the only thing we can control. The fact that we are now having a conversation during public comment, and our past practice has never done that, we are now changing how we're doing public comment going forward. And we're setting a legal precedent that if we were to do this again, we'll establish past practice in which anybody can do this. The issue is, it seems like there's some board members who have information, other board members don't. We're uncomfortable with moving forward. I think it's a communication issue, but rather than close it but reopen closed session, close public comment and then come back and reopen it, that can get us into a bigger issue going forward, because somebody else from the public can come up and demand that you go back and talk about X and come back out, and then we'll have a conversation, and I want to have my manner in which to be heard later on in the agenda. We have set aside a time for this section. If we start messing around with it, we are going to have a legal issue going forward. So the board needs to decide whether through a motion or not to go into closed session right now and deal with this, or they have to talk now or not. If we don't want to keep moving things around when it comes to public comment, else we set a bad legal precedent. I just want the decision to be made. I'm uncomfortable with them talking and me not having no idea what's going on. That's where I'm at, but that's a vote issue, not necessarily a public comment issue.
Thank you. We're much more eloquent in stating that than I was related to setting precedent. So I did receive an email. I have not read the whole thing. I got it right before our workshop at 5 o'clock. So I'm going to ask you to proceed with public comment because we've never engaged in conversation before, and I appreciate what Mr. Wayne has shared. And then we will let a board member pull that item off of consent when we get to it, if that's the choice that's made.
Something like that.
Are we, Mr. Wayne?
I move that the board go into closed session to meet. I move that the board go into closed session as it relates to real estate matters in this meeting.
Mrs. Nias-Strash, if you want to.
I would strongly recommend against going into closed session to vote on any behalf during public comment. As Mr. Wayne has eloquently stated prior to this point, it is not appropriate during public comment to engage in discussion with any members of the public. It's not past practice to do so. It's also not past practice to do anything with regard to bringing members of the public into closed session. There is no agenda item relating to this public comment. If a board member would want to pull any agenda item off later, that would certainly be an option to do so. But engaging in this type of discussion and this type of practice currently with the member of the public during public session is strongly advised against doing so.
I'd like to second Mr. Wayne's motion just so I can have a discussion, please.
I'm not authorizing anybody but our legal counsel to come into closed session. You know what? I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So the decision is to go ahead?
Well, in that event, I guess it does in fact relate to H13 on the agenda because as part of that position, Dr. Turnquist is going to present and recommend that the board engage Lund Company, the broker services of Lund Company, regarding the acquisition of a potential real estate site. However, as we've informed your legal counsel, and which should have been passed on to the board if it has not, my client has certain properties that are the topic of discussion, we believe, under contract for purchase already, which means that engagement of Lund Company would be not fruitful because they would not be able to put those properties under contract. It doesn't make sense. We have those under contract. We've spoken with counsel. We've shown counsel the contracts. And we've made a proposal to the council regarding those, to your legal counsel regarding those contracts. We've not received word back, which we understand that in itself is a separate issue. However, we are alerting you to the fact that Lund Company would not be able to contract on these properties since they're already under contract. And so we strongly, well, we're not going to give the board legal advice, but we wanted to make the board aware of that in regards to that agenda item. Like as I mentioned before, we have presented certain terms regarding those contracts because of OPS's interest in the property, and we'd be happy to discuss those further with the board at a later time, as I still think that a lot of this is probably sensitive information that we shouldn't necessarily be discussing in general public until it's been discussed with council. And so we'd like to protect the board from that, but we will comment on the issue of hiring Lund Company when at this time they're already under contract and they cannot then legally go get those properties under contract for you. Dan?
Yes, I have been working on this particular site for about 5 months. In July of 2014, I was asked by Dr. Turnquist and her staff to look at 2 high school sites, one in northwest Omaha, one in south Omaha, and 2 grade school sites. Since that time, over a year ago, I have been doing so. And then I was directed by Dr. Turnquist and her staff to look at one site and see if I could get that site done, and that was the 156th Street site. I've been working on that for about 5 months, and as Elizabeth said, I have most of that property under contract. Now, if Lunn is going to be hired to represent the school board
1 minute.
in the purchase of those properties, we might understand that. But if they cannot talk to the people that we have under contract, that's where our dilemma falls. I have, as it says in my email, I have worked with OPS on 2 different school sites in the purchase of those.
30 seconds.
The middle school at 132nd Street and State, and the grade school at 116th and State, and both of those acquisitions were very successful.
And we'd just like to point out that hiring Lund at this point may be incurring extra costs that is not necessary when they're under contract, and we've attempted to address this situation through legal counsel with the board relating to these properties. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next public comment comes from James Enright. Please state your name, your address, the spelling of your last name, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. And Mr. Ray will keep you updated at 1 minute and at 30 seconds.
Madam President, members of the board, my name is James J. Enright, E-N-R-I-G-H-T, 3303 R Street, Omaha, Nebraska. I just wanted to briefly express my hope that the board will not change the academic requirements as they stand at present for participation in extracurricular activities. These were just changed a year ago to a 2.0 grade point average, and then coming up there will be a no fail. They can't fail any classes. I think that's reasonable. We need about a few years to prove this or disprove it. I don't think we want to lower expectations. I think what we should do at OPS is strive for higher expectations. And this would, if we water this down now or hopefully not in the future, we'll be just sending a message of lower expectations. So just wait 3 or 4 years and let's see how it looks. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. With that, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Ray, would you please move item H13 to after closed session, please? With that, is there a motion to approve the consent agendas presented in front of us with item H13 moved off?
So, you're removing item 13 from the consent agenda?
H13 to after closed session, to action after closed session.
Could you also remove H8 as well?
H8, this student assignment plan committee recommendation.
Yes,
We'll
ma'am.
let's move that to action, Mr. Ray.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
So
the
moved.
Okay, motion by Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Snow. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, roll call, Mr. Ray.
If you'll give me just 1 second to move those items. Fay.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
9-0.
Motion carries. With that, we'll move to information item I-1A, State of the Schools. Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I'm going to move to the podium to go through the information, if Mr. Ray can bring it up. I wanted the board and the public to be aware of, this is the same document that we used today in our leadership kickoff that walked through kind of where we're at on the data that now is being reported to NDE. We don't have all of it together, but I wanted you to see, and I apologize to our board members that were there, and I'll try not to spend too much time on it, but this is some of the materials that we went through. Started out, and again, this is our big kickoff activity, talking about where we are in the journey, the challenge of the journey, the culture that we're changing and impacting, tied it into our strategic plan, where we're going, how many strategies have already been put into place, and kind of walked through that again. Talked about the shift that we've talked about here at this table in relationship to our buildings and principals and the staff and community in those schools becoming the drivers and moving to that and away from where it's more of a district level down and kind of tipping that upside down. And the creation of professional learning communities for all of our principals. I think that's one of the key elements of what we're trying to shift and change to, is to have our principals be the drivers of a lot of the decisions that we make in the district office. So we spent quite a bit of time this morning talking about that, and talked about some of the elements that relate to, so what are we doing this? What are some of the elements, big picture elements that relate to this, such as how we're measuring school performance, such as the role of central office versus schools, organizational roles, all of those elements, and I'll stop at that last bullet, developing school cultures that have high expectations for all students. And I know I held those two books up earlier and shared some of the information on what we did in the principals retreat, what we did with new principals retreat, and how that correlates to shifting a culture of high expectations for all students. And I know that was mentioned by some of the board members in the earlier workshop today, that as we create those cultures that provides opportunities for all students, we're going to see increasing student achievement, which should help with some of the items identified with the requirements for athletic participation. The next items, kind of state of the schools, was walking through the data. Just wanted the board to be aware and the community to be aware. This is a pretty significant chart right here. You'll notice that our enrollment continues to grow. One of the unique things about this year's growth in enrollment is that we have 400 students from the LC. In fact, we haven't had that many students joining us from other LC districts since the LC was started. So we're not only seeing a growth internally, we have an external growth, and actually we're trying to figure out how we're going to transport those 400 new students, although we're glad they're coming because I think it says something about what we're doing, about what you're doing, and about the impact that others in the learning community see with it. So I think that's significant that we're now 52,000 students, and you can see that chart continuing to go up, and of course that is why we are looking for a new high school, 2 elementary schools down south, as well as 1 out west, because these numbers are going to continue going up. That trend chart won't slow down. It's going to continue going that direction. Attendance rate, another piece of data that we look at when you look at the state of the school and where it is and where it's headed. You can see that we're kind of flatlined on that. We thought we might see a dip with the change in the legislative bill that changed the 20 absence rule, but we actually see it pretty much flat. Slightly down, but pretty flat. Percentage of students suspended. And this is one that we'll have disaggregated for the board in the future as well. But just looking at where we're at today, you can see that there's significant shifts downward. And I think that's part of what this culture shift and recognition of the work that we're doing is having at our schools. And you'll see that middle and high particularly, not elementary as much, but of course a much lower suspension rate there, but still a point there to make that elementary's flat while middle and high are significantly lower. And I think that trend chart will continue to go down as we look at behavioral intervention systems, how we react to our students. Those are all pieces and parts of the strategic plan, and clearly we're already seeing a difference in that area. The four-year graduation rate has not been, the state's not released the 14-15 data, so you've actually seen this data. That stops at 13-14. We'll have the 14-15 data prepared by, I believe, October is when we'll get that from the Nebraska Department of Education. But I wanted you to go ahead and see that's where we left off at. We think those trend charts, again, will also continue going up. AP courses, we wanted to track this. It's been one of the things that we talk about a lot. You can see the numbers going up. One of the things that may slow this down, and we need to add a chart to this, is our dual enrollment courses. We have more than tripled our dual enrollment, our students who are getting college credit while they're in school. We've more than tripled that in the last 4 years. So we'll have a graph added to this. I've asked Mr. Scott Schmidt-Bonnie to put one of those together too. So AP's up, not as much as it would be, because I think some are taking dual credit classes that would have taken AP in the past. Now here's one that I think is really significant. Our percentage of students who are English language learners is really skyrocketing. And you can note this with the last year it was 15,739, today it's 17,000 students. So significant growth in English language learners, and particularly if you look back over the 10-year time span. Another significant growth area, and this is really reflective of the entire Omaha area, number of refugees. We're now up to 2,000, and if you were to go back just 5 years, it's double that. Double the number it was just 5 years ago. So we've seen significant growth, and we know that that's going to continue up. And part of it is the city of Omaha has become a location of choice for many of the area refugees from Nepal to South Sudan to Somalia, Myanmar, the old Burma, all of those locations. And what happens is we now have family cultures here, and that encourages more growth. So we think that number also will go up. And the reason I point out, as we look at the next graphs on student achievement, the challenge that comes with increasing refugee, increasing ELL, is a challenge that all of our schools then have to work with. How do we meet the needs of someone who not only is learning English, but also learning an entire culture which is significantly different? As you can imagine, Somalia and Omaha, Nebraska, significantly different. Nepal, Myanmar, the old Burma, that's the case too. Interestingly enough, our free and reduced number is pretty flat. It's pretty flat, in fact, slightly down this year, slightly down. And I think part of that is reflected on the students that we're gaining from maybe the LC, as well as students that we're keeping that we may not have in the past. And finally, to the student achievement results, the trend charts still continue to go up, although not at the pace, and particularly in reading at the high school level with reading, but at the elementary level we're up 17%. Over that 6-year time frame, 17% also at the middle school. So clearly indicating, even with more English language learners, even with more students who are refugee students, because of the work in our schools, because of the quality teachers and staff, you can see the results there, and the alignment the board's bringing, I think, obviously will help too. Mathematics, you see the same stair step, not quite as dramatic over the 6-year period, 13% gains, 13 for elementary and middle, 8 or 9, for high school. But again, move in the right direction, and again, I think we're going to see bumps. Just like you saw a pretty good bump this year from last year, I think you'll see that next year. Science, depending on the grade level, not as much increase at different grade levels, 10%, 8 and 8, more at the elementary. Writing, definitely better at high school, but definitely struggling at the elementary, which is part of some of the conversations we've had on curriculum adoptions and supportive of some of the grammatical structures that our teachers and principals have talked to us about. So I think you'll see more growth there. And that's the end of it, but I wanted the board to be aware. I know not all board members were able to be at the meeting today, and I recognize that. So I wanted to take an opportunity to look at the materials so that we could show our community as well as the board, kind of the state of our data today, and this will be part of what we'll share as I meet with public groups throughout the community. These are part of the things that we'll go over. So thank you for the opportunity to share.
Mrs. Fay.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Are you good? All righty.
It's just as hot here. It hasn't changed the temperature.
I have easy questions. On the free reduced lunch, I'd like to see that broken down, elementary, middle, high school. Just,
we can do that.
I know when we were talking about student assignment plan, we heard a lot from research that people are, because it's self-reported, that those numbers are not really accurate at the high school level. So I'd kind of like to see how that breaks down, elementary, middle, and high school over time as well. And then when you were talking about dual enrollment and AP, I'm going back to wherever that slide was. Could you just clarify, oh, here it is, percent of students in racial groups who participate in at least one AP course. So our AP courses are typically our dual enrollment at UNO courses. It's not that you choose to do a dual enrollment or to be an AP. So
AP, you get the college credit if you pass the AP exam. We've got dual enrollment classes where it's not an AP class necessarily.
Right.
But they get college credit for taking the course.
I understand what they are, but when we have AP classes that are dual enrollment. So, and this doesn't talk, so is this talking about students who took the AP exam?
These are, yeah, specifically.
Not just students who took the AP class, because a lot of, my kids took AP courses and never took the tests because
that chart is just AP classes, not whether they took the exam. We have some non-AP classes that are dual enrollment, and so that was what I was referencing, is some are non-AP dual enrollment. These would include dual enrollment that is AP, would not include the test-taking piece of it. It's just whether they were enrolled.
Okay, so the test is not in here, so that's good.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, though, is you think maybe those AP students who participate in at least one AP course, those numbers would be higher if they were choosing. Yeah, I disagree with you on that. I just don't know that those numbers would be significantly higher or statistically higher. Because I don't think students are choosing to take a dual enrollment course over an AP course unless you're talking about some other.
That's what counselors have told me at the schools, that they have kids who say, I'm going to go ahead and it'll be, and I hate to say it this way, but I think sometimes they see it less challenging to take the non-AP course that they can still get college credit for, and they don't even have to take the AP test to get the college credit.
Right.
And so that's why they've selected that. That's what our counselors say, is that they have many students that say that.
Yeah, not my experience, but just to.
Is that your experience?
Want to clarify.
Ms. America?
I just wanted to add, from working with a lot of incoming freshmen through my work, we see far more dual enrollment credits than we do AP credits because
they have to take the AP exam to get the.
Because you have to take the AP exam if you're taking a dual enrollment class.
But this chart doesn't talk about who took the exam. That's what I was. This has nothing to do with who took the exam, only who took the class.
But I'm saying you may have students that aren't taking the AP class because they could take a dual enrollment class instead of an AP class where they have to take an exam to get credit. And I think that's what Mr. Evans is saying, that counselors are telling him, is that instead of signing up for AP World History, they may take a dual enrollment history class where they don't have to take an exam, the AP exam, to get credit.
And just as a note, on all the data, we'll be disaggregating later. This was kind of a broad brush to give the big picture of data, but all that will be disaggregated later. Research will be disaggregating all that data for grade levels, disaggregated by ethnicity. All of that will come later. Kind of the broad brush tonight.
So we'll add that to the list of questions, that dual piece versus the AP piece. I don't know who had their hand up. Mr. Vargas?
Thank you. Okay, so just a question. So for the AP scores, the AP participation, the definition for participation under this is completed an AP course.
Exactly, enrolled and completed.
Enrolled and completed,
But not
okay.
necessarily the test.
Yes, that makes sense, but we obviously can get data for the tests on how many completed the tests. So when this is shown to any public meetings that either you are presenting or anybody else, I'd like that information also included. In addition, I know one of the goals for the district on the I'm trying to remember what page number this is. Page 12 of the strategic plan shows the large goals that we set, and one of them is increased percentage of students graduating with one or more of the following, and one of them is a score of 3 or higher on at least one advanced placement exam. So we have that data. I think that is a more predictive data aligned to this to include in the report. I want to make sure that something like that is included, because I think we made it one of our large goals. It's something that we can track. That's something do we have that? We have that data though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we can include that in the one
We've
we
got
share with the public?
All of it will be disaggregated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and because I know there's disaggregated for what we post, but obviously I'm not sure if the presentations you provide or give to community members are going to be the full disaggregated data, or is it just going to be a report that's attached to these presentations?
It depends. Sometimes I'm at a Rotary Club and have 15 minutes, and so if I've got 15 minutes, it's a pretty broad brush. We don't go heavy into disaggregation. In fact, a lot of times I can't get into all the heavy details, so it depends on who I'm presenting with and how much time I have. It's and what they want. A lot of times they'll want specific things. A lot of times they won't care about AP. They'll want something specific to something else. They'll want something specific to the bond issue. So I let those groups determine a lot of it. So I don't.
Well, I would encourage the board. What I would like to see is something that's most aligned to this, and since that is the only piece of data right now in these goals from page 12 of the strategic plan on AP courses outside of the people that have completed it, I think that would be a good standard across anyone to use. In addition, it was great to see the NISA test scores by each over the course of the last 4 years, if I'm correct, for each of the different subjects. But one thing that I had asked in last year is to break it out by ethnicity, and that be I know we're going to do that, but be the standard for which we communicate to all public meetings, because we need to be showing that we're decreasing the achievement gap among all student subgroups on these state accountability tests, and that it be something we publicly put out there on where we've been over the last 4 years and what's been the improvement, and not just in the disaggregated data. So can we do that?
Again, it kind of depends on the group. If I've only got 10 minutes at a Rotary Club, I may not have time to do all that, and if they want to have a specific item on there. So
that's only 4 more slides, though, right?
Well, if they ask for, I guess, presentations are different. If I have enough time, I disaggregate everything down. And as I mentioned, this was a broad brush tonight, and we always disaggregate it all down. So if I have time, I'll disaggregate everything, and if they give me an opportunity to do that, I certainly will.
What I'm asking is, this by itself doesn't paint the picture for how we're decreasing the achievement gaps for our highest need subgroups, but we do include data for the growth of our highest need subgroups, our Ls, our refugee population. It seems to be a disservice if we don't have a standard where we're showing the decreasing achievement gap, or maybe it's not decreasing in some areas for those subgroups, if we're going to show the increasing trend of population growth. I think we should create that standard and put it in all of our, not just disaggregated, put it in the standard presentation to any group and then tailor it. That's what I'm asking. Can we do that? Well, I mean, we can have research put it together. It's just something that I've been asking for.
No, it's not time for me. We can definitely get it together, but what you're saying is for every group that I meet with, I have to give them the same thing. And sometimes they ask for other data, and so I don't even have time to do that. I don't have a standard. Depends on the group, and so, but we can certainly get it. It's not a problem to get it at all.
No, I'm asking for 4 slides that show NISA writing, subgroups, and then growth over the last 4 years. NISA math, subgroups.
Sure. We can do all that.
Yes,
we can give you all that.
For what we share to the community, given we are emphasizing our growth in certain areas, and that's a key piece of what we're trying to do, is decrease the achievement gap.
Sure.
That be the standard. Everything else could be tailored, but include that as a standard for all.
Sure.
Okay.
And I think we will have a more in-depth presentation on the NISA information once it's received. We don't have all that detail broken out from research yet, and that will probably, I think we talked about that coming maybe in September, as well as the AP data, which I know because I just logged on to get my child's AP test scores. The Nebraska was released a little bit later than some of the other states, so I'm guessing that the high schools have just started to get that data, and people aren't back yet. So we can certainly, like we did last year, provide that information as well. So
Right.
I will
It's
just
all
write
coming.
that down as a, probably, I think September is about the earliest on the AP that we were able to talk about last year as well. So we can get that information, and we'll add that as a future agenda item, and I've noted
Absolutely.
that. Mr. Snow.
Thank you. This question could probably be answered later when you guys do that presentation in September, but typically high schools always lower on the NISA test results. Is there a way that for this upcoming year, I know each year we always tweak a little bit of what we're doing in the classroom and with our executive directors, of having what we're doing differently this year compared to what we've done in the past, so we can actually see if they're actually making gains? That would help me a little bit better, especially when we do break that out and we go to our community meetings and people want to see, well, what are we doing better, different than what we have been doing in the past? I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I think I'll just add to that a little bit that I know one of our interviewees from one of the other districts created some incentives for his students, and at the high school level, we all know donuts don't work like they do at middle school level, and so the incentives he created ended up being something that the kids really cared about, and obviously it jumped their scores 20 points. But I think that for high school kids, it doesn't go on their college transcript, and it's not part of their grade, and so sometimes it's a much more challenging group to get to be focused on taking those tests. So maybe I think it would be good to take a look at some of those non-cash. It costs nothing to do some of the things. Some of them may not work for us because of the size of our schools, but to maybe look at some of those alternatives as well.
Absolutely. And we'll also, besides this information, again, this was the broad brush. It comes back with a lot more detail. We'll also have ACT information. That will come later, but we don't have it yet either. And then we'll, again, as I mentioned before, we'll have all of our graduation stuff that includes all the disaggregation to that data too. So all of those pieces are coming back, but I wanted you to see what we shared today and what we have today. So hopefully that helps so that you can see what we're discussing as we begin to look at our data changes.
Ms. America.
Not to add more to your plate, but kind of in line with what Mrs. Godding said regarding the 11th grade, and I think kids understand that they do have buy-in and ownership and the results affect them. It'd be really interesting if we could, I don't know if NDE has done a report lately, but if we could get an update for our board, even if it's just informally, on the ACT pilot project that for the high schools that are doing the ACT in 11th grade for all of their students in lieu of NISA testing, just to see if they've seen success with that or how it's been going.
Just as a note, the second largest district in Nebraska is doing that. Lincoln's doing that. So we should be able to get some good data. So that's a good request. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions at this time? And this will come back in much greater detail in another board meeting. With that, we'll move on to I-1B, Jacobs Bond Project Update. Mr. Summers.
Good evening. President Godding, Vice President Williams, Superintendent Evans, thanks again for allowing us to provide an update on your 2014 bond program. Got a fairly concise agenda this evening, and I'll definitely try to stick to it. We're going to touch on some accomplishments. This is a very large program. It's moving very quickly, but we do have some to share. We will also walk through a bond program overview, provide a general status of the program financially, and of course we will discuss program contingency forecasting, how we do that, and provide an updated forecast as well. As always, we like to share some short-term and long-term challenges Again, some of these you'll remember in the presentation we provided for the quarterly report. You'll reflect and remember some of those. They're very similar. And then finally, I provided a few construction photos of actual activity that's happening at the schools. So I wanted to be able to share some of those exciting activities. So the program is on budget. The program is large and complex, and there's a lot of different factors to consider when you're managing the program. Two specific factors that we really focus in on are cost escalation and scope development, and I'm going to talk about those a little bit more in detail further in the presentation. These factors, along with best practices, are utilized to ensure that all the scope that the school district promised the taxpayers would be delivered while still remaining within budget, within the program budget. The program is on schedule. Scheduling is a critical component of a successful program, and just like the budgets, there needs to be some contingencies planned for. This helps us ensure that we're putting projects out into the market at the best competitive time, and it also makes sure that the durations needed for the projects are in place to allow contractors to successfully complete those projects. Again, the program is tracking on budget and on schedule. There are a total of 81 projects inside of the bond program, and within the last 8 months, 53 of those projects have been activated. That means they're in construction, they're under design, or they're in the bid and award stage. 34 of those projects are in design, which totals about $133 million worth of projects. 16 are under construction, which totals approximately $13.5 million, and $3 million are in the design, are in the bid and award phase. So that is a lot of projects to quickly mobilize. If you remember the Quick Start, we identified there were going to be some challenges out of the gate with quickly mobilizing those projects. However, we've been able to do that successfully within the bond program. These numbers do show the significant effort from OPS and Jacobs to activate and show immediate impact of the bond dollars. These projects account for $149, almost $150 million of project cost. That's about 45% of the total bond program. Again, it's a significant piece. We continue, another accomplishment I want to share is the continued efforts on economic inclusion. To date, the district's contracted $33.6 million worth of work, largely in design and construction. And with those commitments made, the consultants and contractors have been able to contract commitments to Tier 1 or Tier 2 contractors in the amount of $3.4 million. That's 10% of the current commitment. So we are off to a fairly good start from an economic inclusion perspective. There's still a lot of work to be done. We are currently working with the district on a couple of other components inside of inclusion. One is a structured student engagement program, which hopefully in the next month we'll be able to share some more details on what that looks like. And then we're also working on formalizing an unbundling process. So in the marketplace regarding economic inclusion, what we need to be able to do is break our large scope projects down into smaller scopes of work to allow small businesses to compete on those. So those are two other pieces regarding inclusion that we're really working towards. Program financials. So again, overall, currently contracted is the $33.6 million. That's purchase orders or actual contracts written. That's about 8% of the program. And total expenditures, which are checks out the door, actual invoices paid, total the almost $5.3 million. And we'll always see expenditures trailing the commitments because we pay from the commitment. One of the significant components of the program is the program contingency. So I want to take a little bit of time and make sure everybody understands how it was budgeted and how it's utilized and how we forecast its utilization. There are really two main parts of the program contingency. The total contingency was budgeted at $37.9 million, which is about 9%, which is 9% of $421 million. 4% of that is for cost escalation. Cost escalation is a factor of time or congestion in the marketplace. The other 5% is for scope development. There were several items during pre-bond work and while the master budgets were put together that the specific scopes of work needed to deliver weren't necessarily identified. Safe area is a good example of this. The district's committed to providing a safe area at every location, or at all the locations in the bond program. However, the details needed to do that you didn't have at the time when you set budgets. You don't have the detailed structural information that our designers need. So knowing that, we wanted to make sure that there were monies in place to meet those commitments made, but basically with zero scope. So at each location, the solution's a little bit different. At some locations, it's a small addition. At other locations, it might be fortifying the space. But again, the specific scope of work at the time project budgets were developed was unknown. So that's just an area where that 5% scope development piece of contingency, we want to apply safe area cost to that. How we complete the forecasting is we don't just have a formula or do straight line forecasting where we look at a few numbers, punch it into a machine and say, here's just where we're going to end up. The project managers that work on the projects every day, weekly, sometimes on a daily basis, go through several different considerations when they're forecasting their project costs. Some of these considerations are the status of the project, whether it's in design or construction, the status of the issuance of contracts, if the work's contracted, so that's purchase orders or contracts, where are we at with actual payments, the scope of the work, if it's new construction versus just a renovation or an infrastructure project, the timing of the project when it's set to go out to market. One of the challenges with the quick start projects was the time it took to design, and when they needed to go out to market to actually do the first summer, it's just not a preferred time to go out to the market, because a lot of other projects were already in the marketplace bid and happening. So that was one of the steep challenges with quick start. Our future projects, we don't have that same issue on timing. We can really get strategic and understand what other projects are happening in the marketplace, what other projects are happening just inside the district, to really ensure that we can set each project up to be the most complete and competitive bid possible. A few other things that we utilize is direct feedback from the solicitations that we do with our general contractors, with the designers, and all of the other consultants that help out on the construction efforts. And just really opening up and listening to them, what they're seeing in the marketplace, what trends are they seeing, and what other projects are there that are going to go out to the market at a similar time. And then any other special considerations for any individual projects. Again, the scopes are fairly unique at each location. So sometimes there's factors that the project managers want to ensure that we account for. It might be something along the lines of site condition. If there's really not a good understanding of what existing conditions are there, we want to make sure that we forecast use of money to maybe over-excavate or do something structurally that was just not known at the time when the project budgets were established. So we do monitor trends, but again, we don't just plug into a formula and just kind of straight line and just see where we're going to end up. And that's been a part of the conversation at CBOC, is really every single project has a very specific forecast. Each project manager analyzes each component. So we're not just going to take the Ponca trend and say, well, that's what it's going to be. We really need to be able to dig inside of each project, understand the timing, the scope, and the delivery needed to make that one be successful. But specifically to the current bond program, pardon me, the projected overruns currently we have right now, again, this is weekly and daily, it changes, so trying to give you the best and latest information, is $4.9 million. There's some projected underruns, which is $100,000, pardon me, which brings us to a $4.2 million project overrun. So what our recommendation is to the district is that they would utilize this $4.2 million of the program contingency, which is about 1% of the 9% budgeted, or it's 3% less than the budgeted cost escalation. So really, we have $150 million of projects that are active where we can bring experts in to help us forecast where costs will be. It's not just Jacobs, it's contractors, it's designers, it's all kinds of other individuals. Again, we're pulling all this information to help us identify and track. But again, it's 1% of the 9% budgeted. So we feel like this is the right track. We've planned for the escalation in the marketplace, In some of the specialty trades, there's some settling of the market, which is good. In others, there's still a lot of influx. So the market's not something that you can dictate or control, but it is something we can try to plan for. And I think we've done a good job of that with the way that the program's budgeted overall. You provided direction that we want to make sure that we achieve all the scope, within the budget defined. And the way that the program is structured, it gives you the most flexibility to do that. It allows you to move dollars from projects that run under to the program and back into a project that may run over. Again, some of the scope solutions vary, so therefore there might be some overruns and underruns just based on those conditions alone, even with the current market. So I wanted to make sure that we talked about the program contingency. I wanted to make sure everybody understood it's a methodical. Most of the time our project managers spend in the office is really focused on financial forecasting. It's just a big best practice that we really implement and work detailed on. Regarding the project schedule, the program schedule, the schedule is still tracking. There are adjustments that we're making and recommending. Again, we want to make sure that we provide the appropriate durations for the projects, and we want to make sure that when they go out to market, it's the best time to do that and we're not in conflict with other competing capital projects. So we continue to make adjustments as we go, but again, the overall program, everything's tracking in line. Just going to transition into short-term and long-term challenges. Really over the next month we'll be working with students and staff, getting them back into their facilities. There's going to be some work going on at some of the locations, so we're working closely with the building staff and principals on phasing, making sure that's going to be done with student and staff safety as paramount. Maintaining the current schedule. I mentioned this before, but the program is large and moving very quickly. So we want to make sure we're continuing to pace ourselves and not let the program not let the schedule dominate the program. So we're doing a good job of, again, making those adjustments as we go. But that is a challenge and will continue to be a challenge for the entire program. The next piece there, and we've talked about this in many different forms, but again, is understanding the program budgeting model. We've had a lot of detailed conversation at CBOC. In the next set of monthly reports you'll be provided, there'll be some additional detail. We're going to continue to drill down into the data as CBOC requests, or as we get requests from members of the board to see the information a different way. We really want to make sure that everyone has the right, the credible, the accurate information for any conversations that you might need it for. On the long-term side, again, the congestion in the market. A couple of things that we're really working on regarding that, again, is the timing of when we want to actually issue the projects to bid. We're really trying to make sure that we can find good open periods of time. We feel like this fall and this winter will provide the district good opportunity to get first to the market, if you will. So that's a significant opportunity that with Quick Start we really didn't have. The other thing that we're looking at too is just packaging of the projects and trying to look at, is there opportunity to grow some packages or combine some scopes of work to get maybe a different level of contractor involved. And that could be a local contractor, or that could be a contractor that's from a different region that's just really slow. So I think there's other strategies from that perspective as packaging work goes that we can leverage to encourage participation. Again, there's a significant amount of work that still needs to be planned and coordinated in this effort, but we feel like we have the right plan to do all that successfully. A couple of the other pieces that we're working on are potential swing spaces that will allow us to relocate students for a smaller period of time, which will give the contractor full access to a site, which will create an overall more efficient construction process. And it's just a cleaner, logistically easier project for contractors to work on. So that should provide some opportunities as well. There's still some decisions, I believe, that need to be made on grade configuration and student assignment, so we're watching those closely just to make sure we can monitor the impact, if any, to the bond program. And then again, just to underscore the complexity and the pace, nearly 50% of the program will be delivered by September of 2017. So again, a lot of work on the front end of the program. Going to move into just a couple of quick slides on some on-site construction. So Blackburn received some new fire life safety systems and technology upgrades. You can see here, this is them trenching in a new fire line for the fire system. a lift in the lobby there installing technology. Ponca Elementary, most of what you're seeing here is the result of the abatement process. So any materials that we were going to disturb or that would be disturbed during the construction process, the district's environmental group contracts out the remediation of that material first, and then we're allowed to go back into an asbestos-free environment and install new lights, new windows, new technology, new fire life systems, enhanced security, a new roof, safe area. So Ponca is a capital improvement. It kind of touches a lot of the different scopes of work, but that's its current status. And then Lewis and Clark and Morton have some similar scope of work, again, heavily fire life safety, video intercom, card access type of work. So just a quick example of some of the on-site construction. A lot of the other locations from an elementary school perspective have fire and life safety, so very, very similar types of work that's been going on. So getting a lot done. There's still challenges. There's still opportunities to work with the contractors in the marketplace on packaging of work and getting competitive and complete bids, and we're putting all the right pieces in place to do that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Mr. Snow.
Thank you. Did you give this exact presentation to CBOC?
Not this exact presentation.
Okay.
But Mr.
Go ahead. Sorry. I forgot you're on CBOC.
They gave a much more thorough, in-depth presentation on all the projects. They've got what's called a hot list for all the projects that are on there that might be, for whatever reason, whether it's ahead of schedule, well, if it's behind schedule, over budget, they go over those projects every monthly meeting, and they give like an hour-and-a-half presentation typically with data, and it's question and answer. So it's a lot more detailed than this per
Perfect.
school.
Do you guys give
And that report is part of the monthly reports that all the board members should be getting.
So my only suggestion, I would say, I don't know how we could do this, but in future, if we can have people from CBOC be part of this presentation or give this presentation, because I'm not saying I don't understand what CBOC does, but I'm trying to figure out, are they just an information group, or are they a group that has enough teeth to say, well, we feel that this needs to happen? I don't know if that's happening, so I don't see it.
I'll just jump in. You may have been absent from the last meeting when they're doing a quarterly presentation. And so I think you were not here for the last one. So yes, they are doing a quarterly presentation, and it's different people each time from CBOC coming to do that presentation on what their perceptions and understanding, and just to share with the board.
Will that be effective enough for, like, you would say, like an early alert, or I don't know?
The one thing on the forecasting is the projects that we're forecasting for some overages won't go out to bid till December. So these aren't incurred overruns. They're just forecasts. So again, if we can implement some of the strategies we're talking about, the goal is to eliminate those, but we're trying to advise early there may be possible overruns. So there is opportunity. They're not incurred costs. They're a forecasted piece. So these projects in question have been on the CBOC agenda for the last 3 months prior to this month. So we're trying to raise that alert or notify everyone as soon as we can, once we feel like we have good tangible information to say, we feel like there's an overrun here. Here are the reasons why. Here are some of the things we're going to do to try to mitigate it. But I think, Matt, on the hot list, a comment, that information's been shared for several months.
No, I mean, the reason why I ask is, I mean, when you read and I understand paper, they say, I mean, what they are presenting, but when it seems like the way the perception is to the community is that it's not, and I think if we could do a better job on explaining that through CBOC, as well as explain to the board, and not just with quarterly, but I understand having some ongoing so the community knows what to expect. So you're not, the average person, which is our voters, isn't reading the paper and saying, wow, I mean, it looks different from a perspective as if we already knew, like you said, current months before, and it's not a, surprise to many people.
At the next CBOC meeting, we can raise that question if we can get a CBOC member to attend each board meeting to help answer questions, or if there is a specific presentation, partner up to have that dialogue.
Thank you. I mean, the reason why is because I thought the overall, and I'll stop at this. I thought the overall objective of having CBOC was to have people from the community to vouch for the projects that we were doing. So if there was something that was alert, we had somebody that was from the community that was highly respected, that was on CBOC to say, no, I've seen this, this is how it's done, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, understand.
Thank you.
Right. So we had thought quarterly would be okay, but we can certainly ask. And then also, I know that Mr. Scanlon's been giving a monthly report during committee meetings on CBOC as well to the board, and you've been attending, I think, the meetings on a regular basis. Go ahead, Mr. Scanlon.
Yes, I have been attending, and, as I stated before, that I'm not, it's too early to panic. I think right now because we're still on whatever, what was it, 65% of the total projects, 34 of those are in design, and those are the big items like the renovations, the additions, the 16 that we have under construction. Those are your fire, life, and safety that were the easy ones that they went out to, and dollar value, they're not very high. This fall and winter, I think we'll be in a better position bidding-wise, because you'll have the construction season winding down and contractors starting to think about the spring and summer of next year, and that's when they'll start to sharpen their pencils and get a little bit more aggressive on their bidding, so they can fill that backlog, get that sense of comfort. And this past summer, when we were going out, contractors, they had a full backlog, so they didn't have to really get very aggressive on their pricing. So, but I'll tell you, I mean, in the construction industry, personally, you start to get a little nervous around October, November, and you want to get projects under contract. And so that's when we'll be bidding a lot of these larger projects, and I think that's when we'll have a better picture of, yes, we overreacted, or, okay, now we got to get serious. So I think this fall, when we have concrete numbers with contractors.
See that information you just presented helps me. No offense to your presentation, but that helps me a lot more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not overly worried right now.
But that's what I'm saying. Like the people that are in CBOC, which is technically, in my opinion, the watchdog of these projects of Jacobs, to hold you guys accountable. If you guys aren't saying anything, I don't hear from you, then I'm like, well, what are you guys saying in the meetings that I don't really hear? And I would like to hear a little bit more from you guys saying, don't panic yet. Panic. We'll figure out if we have to panic in October or not.
Yeah, no, I would say in the fall I'll let you know whether to panic or not.
Thank you.
Matt will be very honest with us, I'm sure. So thank you very much. Thanks, Matt, for that clarification. Thank you, Mark. Does anyone else have any questions based on the presentation? If not, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. With that, if you haven't reloaded your agenda, you might want to reload. I just reloaded mine. So the first action item is I2A, the first reading of Policy 5101. I think, Mr. Ray, are you going to kind of walk us through? We just have some tweaking to do with...
Yes, all the policies that are in front of you tonight are basically wording changes to update either job titles or numbering within the current policy structure. So to date, just as a quick update, you've approved approximately 150 policy changes since we've started this project. This next batch that is in front of you is the 6000 series, which you have hard copies of at your desk. Those will be coming to you as information items at the next board meeting. But in front of you tonight is first 5101, which updates job titles and departments from changes that occurred last year, and puts it in the sequence of the 5000 series that will be coming up. That'll be the last series that we bring forward to you as a board. So in 5101, it's just an update of that current policy and the changes to reflect Mr. Corner and Mr. Corner's office, and also a change in the board secretary title. I believe it was executive director or director of the board, and changed to the secretary to the Board of Education. So it's consistent within all the other policy statements. The I2B, the 2600, 4008, 4011, 4023, change the Superintendent of Human Resources to the current title. So those are the only changes that are reflected in those. Those are policies that you've previously approved, but just with changes to the job title.
And that's for all 4 of those?
Correct.
2600,
Correct.
4008,
And so-
11, and 23?
Yep, sorry.
No
So those are the policies that you've already approved. We didn't go back and change the policies that we're going to change again. So those are all the policies that you've approved so far under the review.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ray on that? Just trying to do some cleanup here as we go along. No. So this, the packet you have in front of you will come as an information item next time. So you have the next 2 weeks to read the big stack. And I think we're 2/3 of the way through. I think we have 3 numbered sections to go through yet, and this is one of those numbered sections.
Correct.
And then it will come, depending on the comments that come next time. So if you could, actually, if you could read it and then provide your comments to Mr. Ray ahead of time, and then he can do some tweaking before the next meeting, or at least share with us any items that people had questions about, that would be good. But related to 5101, 2600, 4008, 4011, and 4023, does anyone have any questions about any of the items on I2A or I2B that Mr. Ray just covered? If not, I will entertain a motion. However, if you want to combine those, or if you want to vote on them one item at a time, whatever the pleasure of the board member is who wants to make that motion.
I move to approve the updated policies of 5101, 2600, 4008, 4011, and 4023.
So a motion by Ms. Williams and a second by
Second.
Mrs. Fay. So thank you for that. Is there any discussion on those items? Hearing none, there's a motion by Ms. Williams and a second by Mrs. Fay to approve the first reading of Policy 5101, 2600, 4008, 4011, and 4023. Roll call, Mr. Ray.
Gadding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon. Aye. Snow.
Aye.
Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
9-9.
Motion carries. We're going to move on to I2D, Student Assignment Plan Committee recommendation. And Mr. Snow, I know you had asked for this to be pulled to action.
Yes. My mic off, sorry. This is the recommendation for the $600,000 for the walk zones.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
The one that
So
we had as
I'm
information
just,
last
I'm
time.
I'm not going to have a discussion. I just wanted to say that what I said last time, I was going to vote against it, so.
You can go ahead and, if you want to state that again, or why.
Okay. Well, I just feel that we could wait. I understand the urgency to kind of get that consistency for the middle school. I completely understand. I just feel that we could spend the money somewhere else in our budget, especially, I know this is not this year's budget, but next year's, and especially when we don't kind of know how where we're gonna take the money or funding from. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and I know not everyone was here last time. I don't know, Mrs. Underwood, if you want to make any comments on the committee's recommendation regarding this.
Yeah, so this is just, a recommendation to get those walk zones changed, kind of as a interim step until the full plan is implemented, to provide some consistency from year to year, so that, fifth graders in 2015-16, which currently fall under the 1.5-mile elementary walk zone. The transition to sixth grade under the current plan would change that walk zone to 2 miles, so we're just saying that we'd like to implement that, the 1.5-mile middle school walk zone early on. The $600,000 is an estimate. Just as with a lot of things with the student assignment plan, it's difficult to know how people are going to make choice. And so with any cost that we put towards student assignment plan related items, we're kind of making assumptions as to how people would make choice. So, but with that, that is the recommendation of the committee to implement the walk zone changes for the 2016-17 school year.
Are there any other questions that can be answered? Mrs. Fay.
So my question was about the $600,000, and with the budget being as tight as it is for, because this is for the 15, this is for this is 16, 17. Okay, well then my question is still about the $600,000, which is how has it been aligned in your committee process with priority-based budgeting? Did you look at that at all and aligning that, spending those additional dollars with our priority-based budgeting process?
We didn't look at that specifically, no. I will say that that the additional cost is in support of the overall student assignment plan, in which we're trying to make things clearer and more simple. So in that regard, it's in support of the overall sort of student assignment plan vision. But to answer your question specifically, we did not align that with the priority-based budgeting.
One of the things that we looked at, too, when we had a conversation about this as a committee, was the possibility of, by making this change, we might be helping folks to be thinking ahead for the 17-18 implementation year. And so the possibility exists that there might be some efficiency picked up by choice that's made in 16-17, which would then carry to the 17-18 year. We just don't know that because we don't know what choices people are going to make. But we did kind of have a little bit of conversation around hoping that we would be driving some of this, and by maybe reducing that walk zone area, parents might make choices closer to home than further away from home to get transportation as well. So that was, I don't know.
Yeah, and to build on that a little bit, I guess the expectation maybe would be that for those families who are maybe wanting to go to their neighborhood school, but they don't qualify for transportation and are choosing to go to a non-neighborhood school, just because of the transportation piece, this will potentially capture some of those families that are intending to go to their neighborhood school. They're just not, because they don't get transportation.
Any other questions on that? If not, this time I would entertain a motion to approve the reduced walk zone for the 16-17 year from 2.0 miles to 1.5 miles for the middle school grade configuration.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by Ms. Williams and second by Mrs. Underwood to move the middle school walk zone for the 16-17 year to 1.5 miles from the current 2.0 miles. Is there any other discussion on that item? Hearing none, roll call please, Mr. Ray.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow.
No.
Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
No.
Williams.
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
7 aye.
Motion carries. Ms. Williams.
I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, legal counsel, and Dr. Turnquist, real estate, pending litigation, and legal advice.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Williams, second by Ms. Merica. Roll call.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow. Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne. Williams.
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
Gadding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
9-9.
Motion carries. Let me remind the board that the purpose for closed session is for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, legal counsel, and Dr. Turnquist, real estate, pending litigation, and legal advice. Let the record reflect that the board went into closed session at 9:17 p.m.